Have you ever felt that a woman emotionally drained you, but you couldn't explain why? At first, everything seemed right. Her smile was genuine, her words sincere, her compliments touched your heart. But over time, something changed. The same words, spoken in the same tone, continued, but their effect was different. At some point, you found yourself constantly explaining yourself, defending your mistakes, or shaping yourself according to her mood. This is the unnoticed stage of emotional manipulation. Because in modern relationships, manipulation is no longer done by shouting, threatening, or openly accusing. Instead, it progresses with whispers, compliments, and seemingly harmless sentences. According to the American Psychological Association, manipulation is the act of controlling a person's behavior by secretly directing it. So, this is not an open attack, but a well-planned strategy. Hello, I'm Dr. Lyra Benton. Welcome to my channel where I focus on urology and men's health. Today, we'll look at 10 different manipulative phrases women use in relationships, hidden under a veil of innocence. Some will sound familiar, maybe you heard one just last week, but behind each one lies the deep mechanisms of human psychology, controlling through praise, directing through guilt, creating dependency through uncertainty. If you learn to recognize these, you will regain your emotional power not only in relationships, but in every area of life. Let's start with the phrase, "You're different from other men." It's the most elegant beginning of manipulation. Everyone has an ego, and this phrase knocks directly on its door. For a man, being different from others is the fastest way to feel chosen and valued. However, in psychology, this stage is known as idealization. The other person elevates you, creates a perfect version of you, and convinces you to believe in this fantasy they have created. In reality, they don't love you, they love their own expectations. If this phrase is said too early, it means the other person doesn't know you, they haven't discovered you, but how they can use you. Because praise is a tool for bonding, but it's also a control mechanism. People find it harder to say no to those who make them feel special. That's why this phrase is both the beginning and the biggest mistake of many relationships. Another classic phrase is, "I just need a little time." This sentence sounds reasonable because we all want to think sometimes. However, when this phrase is repeated often, the other person may be putting you in a waiting loop. Psychologists call this ambiguous reinforcement, offering small crumbs of hope without giving a clear direction in the relationship. One day they're warm, the next day they're cold. This behavior triggers the brain's reward system, much like a gambling addict, anticipating a jackpot from the machine. Eventually, you become attached to the adrenaline rush of that uncertainty rather than the relationship itself. The person who says, "I need some time," usually doesn't want to lose you, but they don't really want you either. This sentence opens the door to the emotional waiting room, and once you're in, it's hard to get out. "Only you understand me." This sentence is one of the most dangerous expressions that weaponizes empathy. When you first hear it, you think you've connected. In reality, you've started carrying the burden. Such statements often tend to create emotional dependency. The woman places you in the role of a savior, not a partner. The dynamics of the relationship now stray from equality. You become the one who constantly understands, listens, and solves problems. According to the American Psychological Association, this situation leads to emotional exhaustion and erosion of self-esteem in the long run. Because while you are constantly trying to understand, you no longer realize that you are not being understood. This sentence imposes a role change under the guise of love. You are not a lover, you are a refuge. And no refuge can last forever. You deserve better. This phrase sounds like a mature breakup line, but most of the time, it's an elegant way to back out without taking responsibility. In psychology, this is called guilt transfer. Instead of openly discussing the problems in the relationship, the person emotionally withdraws you. They appear innocent while pushing you away with your own decision. Most men who hear this phrase still blame themselves after the breakup, because the words leave behind not the breakup, but a feeling of inadequacy. If deserving better were truly a mature attitude, they would seek a solution together. This phrase is usually the poetic version of an escape plan. "I don't know what I want." This phrase is the gray area of manipulation. Avoiding emotional clarity is a subtle way of maintaining power in a relationship, because you start thinking, guessing, and being patient on their behalf. While saying, maybe they're indecisive, maybe they need time, you put your own emotional needs on the back burner. According to APA research, people in relationships with indecisive partners have cortisol levels that are 30% higher than average. So this uncertainty creates not only a psychological but also a physiological burden. Someone who says, "I don't know what I want," actually knows very well. They just can't decide what they don't want to lose, you or their control. "He's just my friend." This sentence is a classic example of gaslighting or distorting emotional reality. If this statement is accompanied by anger, defensiveness, or secrecy, it is no coincidence. Gaslighting begins by making the other person question their own intuition. Over time, you start to think, maybe I'm overreacting. What's actually happening at this point is not a loss of trust, but a loss of self-confidence, because the manipulator wants to control your perception more than hide the truth. At some point, you stop believing your own eyes. And the painful part is that the most powerful aspect of this manipulation is the explanation, because when you ask honestly, they calmly say, "You're exaggerating." And once words break your faith, you can no longer defend the truth. Our next sentence is, "I'm not interested in money." This is the economic version of emotional exploitation. At first, it seems noble, proud, and even comforting. But over time, the truth is tested. If you're always the one paying, the balance is off. In psychology, this is called reciprocity imbalance. When one side constantly gives and the other only takes, the relationship becomes a source relationship rather than a bond. The real problem is not money, but power. Because it's not who spends the money that matters, but who exerts pressure over it. Look at the behavior of someone who says, "I don't care about money." If they don't care, why do you have to care every time? Think about it. "I just want to have fun." This phrase is an avoidance tactic under the guise of freedom. When said sincerely, it can be a preference, but when used manipulatively, it is a tactic to escape emotional responsibility. In psychology, this corresponds to avoidant attachment. These people keep relationships superficial because they fear emotional depth. However, the manipulator uses this phrase as a shield. They appear free while keeping you emotionally attached. Thus, they form a bond without forming a bond. While you want a serious relationship, they still create space with the excuse of just having fun. And if anyone is having fun in this process, it's usually not you. "I love you." These three words are the most elegant shield for all manipulation, because the word love activates the brain's trust center. But if love is expressed in words and not supported by actions, it actually becomes an emotional investment trap. Psychologists call this verbal validation manipulation. The person in front of you constantly convinces you with words, but their actions are inconsistent. At some point, you start chasing not their love, but the desire to feel that love again. Real love is consistency, not words. Because the love that nurtures you does you good, even if silently. The love that diminishes you always speaks loudly. And here is the peak sentence of manipulation. "I've never felt this way before." When heard at the beginning of a relationship, it is dizzying. In this process called love bombing, the person exposes you to praise, indifference, then praise again. It's an emotional roller coaster. First the peak, then the fall. When this cycle repeats several times, you become addicted not to the person, but to the feeling you experience. According to APA research, individuals who experience love bombing take 40% longer to recover after a breakup than those in normal relationships. Because what they lost is not the person, but the intense feeling they thought they found in that person. It's not love, it's an emotional drug. Manipulation isn't always done with bad intentions. Some people do it unconsciously, as a learned defense mechanism. But the result is the same. One person controls, the other is controlled. Emotional awareness is the only way to break this cycle. When a woman says, "I love you," look at her actions. When she says, "I need time," look at the process. When she says, "I don't care about money," look at her deeds. The true intention lies not in the words, but in consistency. Because manipulation changes words, but actions always speak the truth. Remember, the content I share here is for general health and educational purposes. Words that lift you up are words of love. Words that bring you down are words of strategy. And if someone's words don't make you feel strong, there's a hidden chain within those sentences. Similarly, remember that these forms of manipulation can come not only from women, but also from men, because emotional control is not about gender, it's about intent. If this video was helpful to you, don't forget to like it, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe. See you in the next video with topics that will amaze you. Take care, stay tuned.